We're back. It's Alan and Kimberly, and we alluded to this in an earlier video that we're going to talk about sourcing. Now, Alan and I both have experience sourcing, both in the United States, overseas. It is something that a lot of people just need a bit of help with because it's more complicated than you'd think. I run into people in different groups that say, oh, I'm just going to have a small run made of something to try it out. Well, let me tell you what a small run is. When I was doing my first batch of It Spray, my small run was 15,000 units approximately. I was going to give you the gallons, 63 gallons. Times 3 drums of 63 gallons is what we were buying at that point. That was considered a small run. And then you get to go figure out how to sell 15,000 units or a few hundred gallons of liquid. A small run isn't 50, it isn't even 500 in a lot of cases unless you want to pay a very, very premium R&D pricing. So I jumped right into this, but there are a bunch of things you can source. What have you sourced?
So this is a humorous story.
Okay.
It wasn't humorous at the time, but it's humorous now. Back in the day, this is way before the word supply chain and when actually things were kind of a little bit easier to source, sort of. I was getting 2 parts out of Taiwan. And if I remember right, these 2 parts out of Taiwan, including freight, were about $3 to $5 for both pieces. Really inexpensive. They were small parts. Fine. To get those same parts made in the U.S., they were about $12 to $15 each, not including freight. So you can see that, kind of had to get these out of Taiwan just for the type of product I was building. And I needed this product very late in the summer or maybe very early in the fall. So one year, I'm waiting for my shipment to come in. My shipment isn't coming in, so I contacted the freight forwarder. That's what you did back then, is you contact the freight forwarder. And the freight forwarder said they would contact the manufacturer. Rarely they ever did that, but this time they actually called me back a couple of days later, and they had some news. And I was excited because you generally don't get news. And the news was the products were made, the products were loaded into the container, and the container was loaded onto the ship. I'm like, that's great. Then they came back and said, but we can't find the ship. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't find the ship? Well, we don't really know where the ship is. And I said, I don't really need you to re-explain that sentence. I understood what you said. What do you mean, how can you not have a ship?
This is before RFID tagging.
Yes, this is,
RFID.
Yes, we don't want to date me too much, but this is a while ago. And they said, well, there's a typhoon off of Taiwan, so it's kind of one of 3 options. The ship is either still in port in Taiwan, it sank in the typhoon, or it's off the port of Los Angeles waiting to get unloaded. I'm like, all 3 of those are really bad options because if it's not unloaded yet, I needed it a week ago. And you really don't think it actually sank in the typhoon, do you? They're like, actually, we're taking bets around the office. That is the number 1 bet. I'm like, are you? Okay, fine. Turns out that it had never left the port in Taiwan. So great. Everybody was safe on the ship. Happy about that. But I didn't have my product, and I lost literally tens of thousands of dollars of order.
Did you air freight?
That's the next year. So next year, I'm like, I'm going to fix their little red wagon. I'm going to air freight everything, and I'm going to do it in June. So I get it in July, which is well before I need it in August or September. And great. So I pay all this extra money to air freight it because they were small parts. So it wasn't as bad as you think. So I'm sitting there feeling pretty good about myself in June, July, that, yeah, I got this dialed in this year. And guess what happens? An earthquake hits Taiwan, and it kind of destroyed the place that was making all of my parts. So for 2 years in a row, I didn't have the parts that I needed, even though I went through a lot of effort to make sure that I could get the parts here in time. So what I probably would have done differently is I probably would have sourced the items from 2 different locations. That would have helped solve the problem, and Kimberly has some experience with that.
Absolutely. Secondary sourcing is something that I believe in. no matter what you're doing. Currently, I have 2 different labs that can make the juice for my product. I have 2 different locations that can make the boxes, the labels. I was working for ConAgra selling Slim Jim when the Slim Jim plant blew up, and there was only 1 location. So that was an experience in my career that helped form the way I do things going forward. When I was working for a candy company, I was running a division where we handled all of the non-confection and the retail items. Plush was our number 1 item, making 2 different kinds of plush in multiple colors. I actually had multi-year contracts with 2 different vendors to make sure that we not only would never be out of plush, but if we needed to fill any gaps, it was there. So similar to Alan, I've had some of those stories where, I can't even help but think about our buddy down the street who she was bringing in a whole bunch of product for Christmas that was really important and in her catalog. And now we do have RFID tagging, which is GPS tracking essentially. And you can watch it. And she watched one of the containers that was loaded onto a boat of hers fall right off the side in the Sea of Japan. Like, you could watch it just go bonk, bonk, bonk. And, it's really hard to get the business back, even if you have an insurance claim or something like that you can provide. But, those are some of the horror stories. I would say that the majority of the time, in my current business, I've been able to find suppliers in the U.S., which is really important and easy. Mexico is currently a very good location for sourcing. I would say that one thing I see people do more often than not is they misjudge the amount that you're going to have to buy of something, because anyone who's creating a product or creating a product for you or co-manufacturing for you, they're going to have to buy ingredients or parts or whatever it is. And when you have to get multiple different things to put together a product, you want to get bulk pricing. And so usually there are price breaks. Make sure that when you're ask where the price breaks are. I always do that, especially on something like a label. A lot of times you can save. So if my label is 10 cents for easy math, and it's 10 cents if I want 1,000 of them, but they're willing to give it to me for 8 cents if I want 2,500, and they're willing to give me the same label for 6.5 cents if I want 10,000. I have to look at how many bottles we need. If I can save it over time, that's something that that's not going to expire. It does break down after a couple of years. How quickly can I use it? What are my turns looking like? So remember to ask about price breaks. That's really important in sourcing, different levels of buying. There's so many pieces and parts to sourcing. I think that if you're going to start sourcing, you can see that Alan and I have had some experience with this. This is where a 90-minute think tank session would be really great with us. We'll bring in experts in your area. You have the 2 of us. We can vet and ideate with you on your specific product needs, and we can even give you some of our contacts that we've had over the last, we've got a number of decades. I don't want to age myself any more than you, but we have quite a few decades of experience and different people that we call on for different product needs. So this is a perfect reason to think tank with us.
And maybe in an upcoming video, we'll talk about cargo insurance, because everybody always has great imagery of this big container falling off the ship and then thinking the shipping company is going to pay for that. Here's a tip. They don't pay for that. They hardly ever pay for that. But maybe that'll be a different video where we talk about shipping insurance and cargo insurance and these funny marine terms called particular and general average. But anyway, that's the video on sourcing. If you have any questions, give us a call. We'd be happy to help you out. Thanks for watching.